Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone joining. Hi, Manuel. Please feel free to say hi in the chat, in the comments. Share with us where you're from. We're so glad to see you here. Manuel, where are you from? Hi, Eric. Eric joining from Seattle. Hello. So while everyone joins, take a drink or a coffee or a beer, depends on where are you at the world at the moment. And Manuel is in Barcelona. Amazing. Jennifer. Hi, Jennifer. North Carolina. Also, drop an emoji that describes your weather today. Hi, Monica from Berlin. Hey, Jaylene and Olga. Hi, Maddie. Great to see you here. So just the reminder for everyone joining, tell us where you're from. What are you expecting from this to learn from our session today? Céline is here with me behind the scenes. And she's really excited to share her experience today with you. Hi, everyone. Also, let's take this advantage to do some networking. Drop your LinkedIn profile and connect with fellow community members that are also part of the session today. Hi, Adeline Amar from France. We're also very excited for the session today. Who will be the first to drop their LinkedIn profile? Let's see. Amazing, Eric. Well done. You're the first. Okay. While we wait for everyone to join, I want to share a little bit about our upcoming events for Community Led. Except this event today, we have more events taking place next week. April 2nd, we'll have an event with Danny Weinstein about scaling your global community. Danny has a lot of experience, so I really recommend joining this one. On April 10th, we will have a session of Building Together, a collaboration space for community leaders. I hope I can make it. And the biggest one, London Community Week in July, will be taking place in person in London and also online. I'm planning to be there, so will I see you there, guys? And don't forget to get your ticket. You will see the link to sign up for our events calendar right here. So check it out. Hi, Francisco. And I want to do also have a big shout out for our sponsors for today, Better Mode, for supporting our Talks and Pros series. This is what makes our events like it is possible. And so if you want to learn more about Better Mode, so check out the link that we'll be sharing in the chat as well. Hi, Paul Zimmerman and Monica. So, guys, keep dropping your location and LinkedIn handles. Some housekeeping before we start. So, as we go through the session, feel free to drop your questions here in the chat, and we'll take them at the end of the session when we will be doing our Q&A portion. Also, the recording will be available in our video library after the event, so we can always come back and see that. And check out the link that Francisco just dropped for the community week. I have to say I was last year and it was a really amazing event. Also kind of to see global leaders for community coming from all over the world, from Australia to Canada, of course the States and Europe and Asia, coming to London to learn and to meet each other. Hey Amanda from Canada. Amazing to see you here. Are you excited for today? Hi, Serena. And Sawyer. Hi, Sawyer from Madrid. I hope I pronounced your name well. Okay, so let's welcome Céline. Céline Riemenschneider.
Yes.
Céline, hope I said it well. Céline is a community builder with over 10 years of experience helping community managers thrive. She's specializing in building communities for startups and growth stage, and she crafts strategies to drive engagement. Since 2022, she's also has been the creators community lead for Canva in Australia and Germany. So, Céline, I give you the mic.
Thank you. Happy to be here, everyone. So I'm going to be sharing my screen with everybody. Can you see it? Yes, I think you can, right? Good. Let's get started. Thank you, Tali, for the introduction. And welcome to everyone who's here today. I'm super excited to talk with you guys about diving into a topic that I think every community leader eventually faces, and that is moderation and crisis, of course, too. So we'll talk about how to prevent chaos before it starts, how to manage crisis when it happens, and also how to build a system that keeps your space safe and thriving. So Tali already did a little intro of me, so but I had it already in here as well. So I'm a community builder since 2014, and I started working at Yelp at the time. Currently, I'm the country community manager at Canva for the German-speaking region, not Australia, Tali, sorry. But Canva is based in Australia. So, and I'm a community consultant at the Community Mentor, where I do work together with startups and strategize and try to make their communities grow. But let's dive in. So today, our agenda will be about these points. So we'll be covering the anatomy of a community crisis, to talk about crisis management and look at the essentials at a glance. Then I will take you through the 3-step framework that I want to show you, which is to acknowledge, act, and address. And last but not least, we have the 4 pillars of moderation, and we will be taking a closer look at this. So I like to ask also a little bit something to the community who is here today to watch. Who here has had issues in their community in, let's say, the last year? And we can say from like 1 to 10, if 1 is like a low problem, like crisis, and 10 is like a complete community fire. How would you rate this crisis or problems that you've had in the community? I want to see what I can give you and who's faced these situations. Tali, thank you for being the first one. Oh, there's an 8. Okay. Okay, all right. Interesting. All right. There's a whole spectrum, I think, from low to really high. So that's not great for you guys, but great in the sense that it is like you're at the right spot today. Then I think when we are talking about exactly this topic. So interesting to see the whole spectrum, of course. So good. The thing about online spaces is that it gives people a lot of freedom, and with that, comes, I think, a lot of passion, opinions, and also sometimes conflict. And I have noticed this, maybe some of you have as well, if you have, for example, hybrid communities where there is offline meetups as well, but the large portion of the community is online. I don't know if you've ever faced trolls, for example, like to that high level of having a crisis and having to moderate such people as well in your communities. But most of the time, it is that they feel safe behind their computers and laptops because it gives them that freedom, because they are more anonymized behind the screen, so they're able to really rant easier than actually they would be able to do in an offline environment face to face. So it is just part of the job sometimes, and our job as community managers and moderators isn't to really restrict people, but it is to protect the integrity of the space that we have. And with that, I think it is very important to understand what are the motivators of your members, of your community. So what really made them join the community? Like, what's the purpose behind your community, why they're there? Do they have any extrinsic motivators, such as rewards or money? Like, is there like every time they do something, do they get a certain XYZ amount of money paid out to them? Because it is always the case, if there's an extrinsic motivator, and if there's ever going to be a change from the company side on this, there will be people who will not be happy about it. So it is something, I think, to be prepared for from the beginning on. Or, for example, are your members contributing to your platform? As in, is it like a UGC community, or a support community? Because then there's like all types of different ways of how they can be conflict, but doesn't have to be. So always to keep that kind of in mind. Which brings us to the point of the building blocks of proactive moderation. So why is it important to be rather proactive than reactive? Because proactive moderation is like gardening. You cultivate the environment so that that toxic behavior doesn't even take root. It's a really nice metaphor, because I'm terrible at gardening, but definitely much better in applying this metaphor into real community life. Whereas if you're reactive in moderation, it often means damage control, at which point it, of course, erodes trust. It makes you seem inconsistent or absent, for example, and of course, it causes stress for the moderators. So proactive systems make the community more self-sustaining, with fewer escalations and more member accountability. So a healthy, visible framework prevents problems from escalating, and members know what's expected and what won't be tolerated. And therefore, it is also very important to, set guidelines that work. So think of guidelines as a cultural tone setters, basically, not just, a list of do's and don'ts that you share. And instead of a rule where you say, don't be rude, or don't be aggressive, don't have, bad comments, try to formulate it in a way where it's like, we speak to each other as if we're having coffee in person, or the way you would speak to your friend, or to disagree with ideas, but not people. So it's just more constructive and put nicer, as instead of, the do's and don't list. Good guidelines should really be human. It should not be like robotic, but it should also, of course, be actionable, so that people know what to do and what to avoid, and it should consistently enforced. I think in some communities it has to be consistently enforced, and there's some communities where you're very lucky and you don't have to maybe be so consistent about it, because it is already enforced on its own from the community. I think as a bonus tip, considering I'm also working at a visual community, like communication platform, creating a visual version of your guidelines or, like a pinned welcome post, that is visual. People absorb it much better because people remember visual things much more than just like a written piece of text, and they don't really go back to it. And that brings us to the point of also onboarding, because it sets early expectations. The first impression really matters. Most community issues happen when expectations are unclear. So I think using onboarding moments from welcome messages to pin posts or to automated like direct messages, however you are doing it in your community, it is very important to use this as a way to reinforce guidelines, to share values of the space, and to consider a little bit of a "this is how we do things here" post or a checklist before someone's first contribution. You can even ask members to acknowledge the rules before posting, if that's something that's necessary on your platform, because some of the platforms do support this from happening. And you can question your audience, like, for example, what's like one thing you wish every new member knew before posting in this space? If it's like a really big forum and lots of conversation going on there, it would be nice for some people maybe to know certain things before they start posting inside right away. This can be something, of course, you can think about as well. But most importantly, it is crucial, I think, to empower your members, because you don't have to do it alone. That's a nice thing about community. I think that community culture is co-created, and you can really identify and uplift members who already embody your values, who are really enthusiastic to be a part of your community, and you can really give them moderator powers. You can give them badges. As we all know, in communities they can have ambassador roles, different kinds of perks, of course, you want to give them, but most importantly, like, you can give them a moderator playbook, for example, so your team can act with consistency, and you can train them to redirect negativity or model positive engagement, and to kind of help in de-escalating situations without having there be any drama. So to recognize and I think publicly thank your champions, your ambassadors, your whatever you call them for your community regularly, this really reinforces the behavior you want others to adapt. Because I think it should be seen that moderators or community managers aren't the police. They're hosts, they're facilitators, and they're the culture shapers. And that's why it's very important, I think, in empowering these super members that you have in most of the communities, I think. So let's take a look at the essentials of crisis management. Because I think even the most positive communities experience conflict, and that's normal. And usually the real issue really is below the surface. So I always think that this is a very nice metaphor to use, because the iceberg is so pretty and nice, and you see what's like on the surface, and then there's like so much more underlying, of course, like beneath the surface. So what types of crises can there be? What you see on the surface level, of course, are the smaller things that say like harsh language or personal attacks or off-topic or inappropriate posts or member dissatisfaction, whereas underlying tensions then are lack of clear guidelines or enforcement, or unaddressed toxic behavior, someone who like repeatedly is having this kind of behavior, and if it's not unaddressed, it can explode at some point. There can be burnout in the admin team, for example, as well, which will then trigger different tensions. If there's, I think this is one of the bigger ones, definitely to not ignore, if there's any form of platform bugs or issues, whatever your community is lying around, but if it's like tied to a platform where something doesn't work the way it normally should, this usually does cause a lot of tension. And conflicting values amongst members is also a crucial one in the underlying tensions. And when we look at the anatomy of a crisis, it often starts with, a smaller misunderstanding, but they can escalate when rules aren't clear or when moderators go silent. So the typical triggers are unclear or inconsistently applied rules, silence from moderators in moments of tension, and this is like really key. Don't be silent. It makes the community always definitely rile up more. Any abrupt changes or policy changes without an explanation, or emotional or value-driven topics, for example, inclusivity, social justice, identity, etc., or the misinterpretation of tone or an intention of someone, because when you read things, when it's written, it's very different than the way you would talk, of course, so people can misinterpret a tone as well. Which leads then to how it can spread. So depending on how small or big, of course, it can spread in various ways, and they're not always very pretty. So they can go from screenshots or threads shared outside the group, which is terrifying, to, of course, members piling on before facts are established. This is something you see much more regularly, but if there's any sort of, triggers or tension, moderators responding late or emotionally to something because they can be drained. They could have, the company side, they hear the member side, and at some point, if you get emotional about it, which we shouldn't, it can usually trigger, of course, the community members to get a little bit more upset about things. Or, other communities noticing and jumping in. And I think one of the ones nobody likes is if you have a thread or something on a different platform. So, for example, on Reddit or X or Facebook, the algorithm can surface the thread even more because they think there's a lot of conversation happening and maybe doesn't really understand the actual insights to the conversation. So it pops up high. Actually trying to avoid that from happening. So it's not nice. And then the common community reactions to this is usually that if you're lucky enough to have really great loyal members, they come to defend the space, and that's what we all want. But in such situations, of course, lurkers, every community has lurkers, people who just read, who do not dare to speak up. In such situations, lurkers always get activated because they think, oh, okay, everybody's speaking, and I can just join in and pile on top of this because it's, I'm not like speaking on my own and introducing myself. I am just tagging along. So there's a lot of those people then popping up all of a sudden. Or a sad thing is, of course, that people leave the group quietly or loudly, which is worse. And of course, inevitably, trust erodes, of course. And it is much harder to rebuild trust than to maintain it in the first place. And that's why I want to introduce you guys to the 3-step framework of acknowledge, act, and address. So the part about acknowledging is definitely don't go silent. Show members you've seen the issue, like be honest if you're still gathering facts. Just there's an example text I had shared here. It can be anything, of course, just speak to them in a kind, nice tone. Even if you don't know all the facts or are still waiting for things from the company, just make sure you acknowledge it because that will definitely de-escalate things from blowing up much more. Then act on it, of course, once there's something you need to act on it. If there's something you need to remove harmful content, for example, if needed, reach out privately to involve parties if possible, and escalate it, of course, if legal, safety, or any ethical boundaries are, of course, crossed, and stay neutral in tone. This is important. It's sometimes hard, as I said before, not to be emotional, but being firm in decision-making. And then, of course, is to address. So once the dust settles, you can communicate with the broader community. You can clarify what happened without naming and shaming, of course, reaffirm the values of the space, and then ask for feedback or ideas if it's relevant. So, sorry. I have an example for you here of a crisis situation. This is completely fabricated, by the way. It's nothing real. But I tried to think of like the best scenario to make it be big enough to be very important. So let's say if there's a platform focused on user reviews and recommendations, so something, UGC related and bigger. So think it can be a review platform, subreddit, or a niche forum. And suddenly it removes a large batch of posts that don't meet newly updated quality standards of the company, such as, the reviews are too short, they're lacking specific details, off-topic discussions or rants, or, repetitive or like low effort content, which doesn't serve the company. So they remove them. The platform intended this, as a quality cleanup, a move to elevate trust and usability, but they didn't announce it in advance. And here is the shocking part, of course. And they don't explain it right away. So what happens? What went wrong? Of course, most of us know what went wrong. It is a sudden enforcement of new moderation rules without clear rollout. There's no upfront communication or education on this happening. No proactive support, of course, any examples, understanding, a grace period, and the platform goes silent as complaints rise because they didn't communicate anything and they take time. And it looks like guilt or indifference, which makes people very mad. And of course, then the community reaction is, threads pop up accusing moderators and management of censorship. Members feel that authentic experiences are, being erased. Veteran users threaten to leave or to boycott, and then new users are confused and afraid to post at all. And then a few local users start, rallying support to push back on, the moderating team or the community manager behind it. How could this have been done differently? In many ways, I think. But you'll be surprised, this does happen. So I'm thinking of real world examples and different things and try to put it into this example by just kind of changing it up and fabricating it. So if we would have applied the framework to this, it would be acknowledge first. So, we've seen your feedback around, recent content removals. We understand this has caused confusion, frustration, whatever. And we're listening. We're trying to get back to you when we have more answers. People want to feel validated with their emotions and be heard. Even if you don't have the right answer at the time, it is very important, I think, to communicate right away with them and let them know, like, hey, I heard you. I'm going to get back to you as soon as I know more. Because most of the time, as community managers, we're also the middle ground between the members or users and then the company. And of course, we know like the intel from the company maybe, and we cannot obviously share that publicly. And then we get the frustration from the community. So we're stuck in the middle. We're like a little buffer zone. And hence, we do have to give them that, okay, I'm still, trying to hear more, and then I'll get back to you. And then, of course, is you have to act as part of this framework, to pause enforcement temporarily and to, assess the damage that is done, share a detailed post, for example, explaining the new standards and why they matter, why they're getting done, and offer specific examples, if you can, of, what qualifies as high quality content and what doesn't. So people have, as we said, visually communicating is super important so people can understand by seeing it. And I think the best yet, if it's possible, is to create like an AMA or a Q&A, thread to engage directly with people. It can be via, a video like a Zoom or something, or it can just be in a thread as well. But to let people know you heard and you're trying to answer their questions, definitely. And then to address it, like say, okay, we own up to this. We had poor communication. We should have communicated better and earlier. Emphasize shared goals that you have, like to have better visibility and trustworthiness in the future. And to reaffirm to them that, we want this to remain a space that's, real, it's honest, and we hear your voices and we're not trying to, stifle them or suppress them. So that would be a really great example, I think, of how it could have acted better. There's lots of experiences I have had myself personally as well without being able to share directly what happened, but I, for example, work with a platform that was acquired by a different outside company. And I've had really angry members because they did not, the company acquired another platform basically, and the members still stayed, but they did not like getting acquired. So some things had changed through the acquisition, of course, the way the model was working, and they were very angry. And I was the community manager, and I had to deal with some very angry people. I wasn't part of the acquisition. I didn't buy it, but of course, I, faced most of the crisis, and it was a very frustrating time for me too, because I got a lot of really bad comments. And this was a community that was, forum based, for example. And what I did try to do at the time, and it was hybrid, so this was pre-COVID, and there was a lot of meetups happening as well. I tried to have a lot of positive threads pop up in the forum, or have new threads basically started by me or started by other members. As I said, I tried to champion members where I saw they are very positive, they're very active in the community, and I made sure that they popped in more into the feed and wrote some nicer stuff, instead of always having me just write on my own, or just the people who are just angry in the thread. And I reached out to them, on a one-on-one basis too, and I tried to understand, of course, from their point of view, what they're angry, what I can do to make it better, because I can't sell it back to the company, basically. It's not possible. So what can I do to support you? And when we had meetups, I invited them to the meetups, and I asked them to come and join along and meet me in person. And it took a little bit of time, but basically after, I think, a couple of 2-3 months or so, they started showing up regularly at the meetups, because they were fun, they were cool. They've seen that the community people were all really nice as well, and they wanted to be a part of the community. So it just took a time. It took, as I said here, acknowledging, acting, addressing, a lot of patience. But later on, they became actually very active members. So it is possible. So keeping the community engaged is always key, but I mean, before having a crisis anyway, but after it, of course, as well. So you don't just control, but you actually communicate. There's transparent messaging, so you can really rebuild trust. And it's always nice and very important to spotlight your members, especially the ones who embody all of the positive values that you want everybody else to adapt as well. And turning crisis into growth, reinforcing the norms and evolving practices. And that brings me to the part of tools. And I know there was a question about this as well. So I put together tools to support moderation strategy. And I think, as you can see from here, there's a left and right. And the way I split it up is there is manual moderation tools and there is automated moderation tools. So I think you need a good mix of both. You can't just have everything be automated. So let's take a look at these together. So on the manual part, we have, for example, if you're writing guidelines or playbooks, of course, it's going to be manual. And for this, as a draft, of course, when you're writing all of this up, you can use tools such as Canva Docs, of course. I am a little biased. I have to use Canva, but I used it before I worked at Canva as well. But you can also use Notion, for example, for this, which is also a really great tool. Then when it comes to onboarding flows, you have, custom welcome messages, pinned posts, introducing rule and tone. And for this, you can use, if you're having a Facebook group, for example, the pinned post. Welcome bots you can use in Slack and Discord, where you have kind of drafted the written part and then yourself, or you can have HubSpot automations where you just, write everything up in there as well. Manual reporting and flagging systems could be, to encourage members to report or flag harmful content, which we of course want. There's a lot of platform native buttons, of course, like a report button or flagging button. But if you don't have this, or as an added on, you can have forms, for example, in Typeform or Google Forms. And then I think it's important to schedule check-ins and debriefs with the team to stay on top of, challenges, especially if this is something that happens more regularly, or there is a possibility of something like this arising. to definitely track such situations via Canva Docs, Google Docs, or Notion as well. Then on the automated side, we have keyword monitoring and alerts, which you can set up, for offensive language, spam, or sensitive topics. And there's tools that are built into platforms like Discord or Slack or Facebook group admin assist. Then you can have AI-powered moderation to flag hate speech, harassment, or spam in real time. For this, I have to say, I haven't tried it yet. What has been suggested to me has been Hive and Spectrum Labs, but maybe some of you have used it, so you're very welcome to share, of course, your experience in the chat too with things if you have any great suggestions for this. Then there's like auto mod bots and filters, of course, to remove low quality or rule breaking content. And Reddit has an auto mod, for example, or Discord has a curl bot. But there's like different versions of this out there as well. And of course, you can have scheduled posts and reminders. So to automate posts and to reinforce, rules or share best practices, you can either do it platform native, of course, whatever platform you are in, or you can use tools such as Later or Buffer, or there's many variations, of course, of wonderful scheduling posts. I think the question was, I had received from Paola, which one is my favorite moderation tool? I think it's hard to say a favorite to have. I do like HubSpot. We do use HubSpot. And I have to say, my communities are at the moment in Facebook and in Slack, and I don't really love Facebook so much, Facebook groups, but it is there. I can't change it. The Facebook group admin assist is definitely helpful, and some of the automated moderation tools that they have or insights is very helpful as well, I think, for moderating a community group, definitely. And enforcing pin posts and everything as well with the group rules is something which is easier to see once you're in a Facebook group, I think. So to that question. So to close kind of the loop, it's also very important, I think, to build feedback into the moderation system through, MPS, member interviews. This is something I really like, and this can just come naturally. It doesn't have to be where you call it, can I have an interview with you? It can just be a normal one-on-one chat you have with a member where they do address their concerns or their feedback or things where you can ask some questions, of course. Or you can send out a form. I have done this many, many times as well, sometimes quarterly, sometimes half year. Or if you want to just do it at the end of the year, you can definitely send out a form, for example, to your members and ask them for feedback on things. Honest feedback, positive and negative. So you can, it's great to have feedback, right? If there's something negative, at least you know what it is and you can build on it and change it. And of course, as we had said, championing your members, of course, ambassadors are a really crucial part, of course, of the community world, and their feedback is quite golden as well, because they have different kind of intel, because they are very actively involved, I think, with other community members as well, and they can give you some golden feedback sometimes as well. So this definitely helps in closing the loop. And it brings me to my almost last part, actually, of the 4 pillars of moderation to keep in mind, I think, to make sure that everything runs smoothly. Proactive moderation, set the tone early through clear guidelines, community onboarding, and role model behavior, because prevention is better than damage control. As a crisis response, recognize the signs of brewing conflict swiftly and community. Use, as I mentioned before, the acknowledge, act, address framework to handle issues without losing community trust. Then, of course, trust and engagement. Even during tough times, engagement can grow if you foster transparency and elevate positive voices and show consistency. So crisis can become turning points if handled well. And smart tooling. So it can be the ones I showed. It can be your own favorite tools, of course, as well, but using a balance of, I think, manual and automation to scale your efforts without losing the human touch is key. You can let the tools do the heavy lifting if you find one that really works great for you, but definitely keep empathy at the center of everything that you do. Don't let that be automated or turn robotic. It's I think, super important in the era of AI. And I have a little resource here as well, and I will share it with the team here to share it with you guys, I hope, as well. And that's kind of like in Canva, of course, docs. Let me see if I can actually blow it up. Yes. So the way it looks is this. You can use it for yourself. It's a template. You just have to make a copy of it. Your community vision and values and everything where there's like space, you can basically fill it in for your own community. You can, make up your community guidelines here. The moderation roles and responsibilities. If you have a really large community, some people here, have communities with 500,000 people, I know, or 1 million people. And there's a bigger team behind it than just one sole person. So it's, I think, important to set roles and responsibilities for that and who does what. Moderation procedures, of course, and crisis management, the tools and resources you'll be using, and evaluation and feedback of how to look at everything. Yes. And that's it on my part. So thank you very much. If you want to contact me, you can find me on LinkedIn too under my name, Céline Riemenschneider. This is my personal email if you have any questions or want to reach out. And you can find me also on my website, Community Mentor. Do you have any questions? Any ones I didn't answer?
Hi. Céline, first of all, thank you for this inspiring talk. And yeah, we do have questions, I'm glad to say. So I take a few seconds and I will choose the question. I'm going over. Okay, we'll start with Serena. And it's a very important question, I have to say. How can community teams take action before the issue has gotten out of hand?
As I said before, I think it's very important on the level of the issue. The team has to take by addressing, I'm trying to think how best to formulate this. By addressing this, I think, in advance. So if you know something is coming up and it's going to use discomfort in the community and it's going to cause issues, and I think sometimes, most of the time, as the company, we know what we're about to set out. And I think while planning something like that, it is always important to think of how's the community going to react to this and to be proactive in advance. You can't always know 100% their reactions, but there's a lot of things, I feel, from my experience, we know how they're going to react because we have, conversations with them all the time. So we definitely have a feel for what they are going to say. Share this with the team beforehand and make sure you can try to have, for example, already set up like an AMA, or you already have communications that you can send out to people via email or whatever channels you use. Because once it's out there, I think, and you haven't done anything on your behalf as a community team, it always escalates much more. And then it's kind of harder to, wind it all back and make people be like calm again. As I mentioned, just to try to be proactive and see things in advance of how people will react.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And so we have like a question from Caitlin, which is also kind of tied into this. Caitlin said she's curious if anyone faces challenges where leadership wants to lean more towards silence during the fact-gathering stage, and how to advocate for our community and team on why it's important to speak up early and acknowledge things when they go wrong.
I think it's a broader question to everyone here, so maybe pop it in the chat. But I can definitely say from my experience, this is something crucial, but something we are faced with where we do have to argue, I think, with the leadership team, because they don't always have they don't know what we are faced with, because they don't have the conversations. For them, it's more important of, bringing something new out, for example, or having a new rollout, and they don't understand the actual effect it has on users and community members because they don't have those conversations with them on a day-to-day. I think if they were put in our position for one day and would talk to them and hear all of the conversations going on, they would think differently. And sometimes I think it's fact gathering. So if you have things where conversations, you can show screenshots or anything else, because it's always easy to say, oh yeah, the community manager is always going blah, blah, blah. But it's like, no, these are real conversations here, a screenshot and everything, what people are saying. And this is really affecting them, I think, goes hopefully a longer way if you can prove the facts. And then I think people are more eager to open their eyes to it.
Yeah, I also think that like also showing the leadership screenshot from the community one time. Hopefully, for the next time, they will understand how important to be there upfront. Tamsin, I'm not sure I understand your question. I will read it, but maybe you can just add more clarification. Do you have any advice for advocating for this kind of transparent response when you are not the manager or leader of the team?
Yeah, not sure I understand the question.
So Tasman, if you can drop in the chat, like, what do you mean? What's your role and how do you relate to the manager or the leader of the team? So we can answer that. And in the meantime, I'm taking a question from Juliana, who's you kind of responded on this, but maybe like just have it more specific. So Juliana shared that they have a long time client advocate who's been incredibly valuable, but lately he's been posting very critical forum comments about the product. What happens from time to time, and while he's not being rude, the tone and content aren't ideal for the community. They already included him in releases and discussions, but it's still getting tricky to manage. How can they keep him engaged and aligned with the company?
It's a good one. I think those kinds of people exist in every community.
Yeah.
I can say I have this too. I think, I mean, I don't know if you've tried, Juliana, but to maybe reach out to the person one-on-one, if this is like through, private messaging, whatever your community is, of course, or if there's any way to have like a one-on-one on Zoom or, Google Hangouts, whatever, to try to be like, hey, let's just have a coffee chat and, catch up. Because sometimes I feel when you do connect to these people one-on-one, you understand a little bit more where they're coming from, or even if you don't like have the empathy with them for why, but you still understand kind of the reason behind their behavior, which might give you a little bit of like a glimpse of how you can communicate differently then. In that sense, and just like point out, look, we're trying to do our best with our product in the community, and we're just like humans working behind this as well. In the end of the day, try to show your side in that conversation maybe as well, and get more out of that person to to then come to a middle ground, hopefully. Because if it's not like a tone where it's set off really badly, I think it is still possible to align with each other better. But there's also just some people, I have to say, who are by nature negative, and we can't really turn them into super positive people. We can just try to be proactive and maintain them. It's as sad as it is. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. I really think it's a good answer, and I hope it, Juliana, it helps you. You can drop us, let us know in the chat. Okay. And we had another question from Tasmin, and Serena tried to explain. Okay. Okay. Where were okay. So Tamsin says that he doesn't. He works. He's not part of the team, but he is working daily on the forum community on a daily basis, and he doesn't have the authority to make decisions about transparency. So he just like doing the moderation part, from what I understand, but he doesn't make the decisions about what he's allowed or not allowed to say. So it's probably very hard to explain things or to say things which are helping the community and managing crisis, maybe. So, what advice on suggesting the approach you outlined to leadership who don't have the same outlook? Okay, so like getting the buy-in from the leadership.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned before, just you can point out that yes, you're not in a decision-making, you know, point at this, but you are still very involved in it, which does affect you because, as you say, you are working on the forum and community team on a daily basis. It's not just once in a while. It is a daily basis. So of course, I think you should have an opinion about it, and maybe you point us out, say, look, I'm working on this on a daily basis. I have an opinion because I see what's coming in. Try to be like, hey, can I have 5-10 minutes of your time so I can show you certain things, and then maybe you can do a little presentation or something where you show everything that is going on and try to make them understand that. I think people by nature don't lack empathy, so it is possible that if you try to be transparent about it, they will see what is happening there and hopefully come to a conclusion that will help your team.
Well, thank you. Tamsin, let us know in the comments if it's helpful. Thank you. Okay, so our last question will be, how do you moderate in a way that still encourage healthy disagreement, but free expression?
I don't see it. Sorry.
1 second, I will make sure you can see it in the chat.
How do you moderate in a way that still encourages healthy disagreement and free expression? Healthy disagreement is, I don't think people can always agree on everything, but I think what's important is that it's relevant to your community, in that sense that it's not just I assume, but I don't think it's a free place to chat for anybody about any topic, right? For example, it would make like no sense in my community if my members start talking politics. I would be like, hey, sorry, but this is not the place for us to talk politics. If you guys really want to talk about this, you can take this elsewhere, because such topics, it's not going to be healthy disagreement. For example, it starts like that and then it turns into something worse. And that's why if it's topic related of the company, of the community, it's nice, they can have a chat, but always maybe if you see it might escalate before it does, like I say, proactively, just to make sure, hey guys, this is just like a healthy discussion. Like remember, we're here to talk about XYZ topic, for example, but let's not get too worked up or too heated, because that's not what we're here for. Let's try to stay constructive, and we can have differentiating ideas, but let's not be against each other, and try to always then, I think, chime in rather than just stand back and watch, because when you do that, I feel you look away for 2 minutes and then it escalates. It's kind of like with kids. I see you have a kid too, Tally. Mine do the same all the time. So I have twins, so I have to always de-escalate the situation before it explodes. So it's like, hey, guys, like, let's just calm down. And I think it goes the same for our members. So yeah.
Yeah, we can definitely relate. There are similarities about that. Amazing. So I want to say thank you very much, Céline, for your amazing insights today and for sharing with us real life examples. Connect with Céline on LinkedIn and on her. She also shared her private email. Thank you everyone for joining. Don't forget to join Led by Community and connect with fellow community managers. Also, don't forget to sign up to our next events taking place in April and later on. You can find them on the event calendar. And I would really want to thank you again, Celine, and everyone joining today. And we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.